Now in this presentation I will talk about password-based authentication. Now password-authenticated key exchange or PAKE is an umbrella term. It defines a group of password-based authentication method. Now the goal is to establish a shared secret key between two parties by exchanging messages in a secure way while authenticating each other based on their knowledge of a password. Now in PE method, this protocol has these steps. Now the first step is the user registration. In this step, client sets a password with the server. So after this step, both client and the server has the shared password. Now in the next step, password authentication. Based on this shared password, both client and the server generate some keys. It could be long-term key, it could be ephemeral or the temporary key, but the condition is that these keys could be generated based on the shared password. Now, after key generation is complete, these keys must be exchanged with each other. And after key exchange is done, a shared secret key is generated. By the both parties. And after this shared secret key is generated, both parties must confirm with each other that the same secret key is generated. Now this is the description of these 4 stages. Now here first I will discuss about the simple password exponential key exchange SPEKE. It is a one kind of PAKE method. Now SPEKE is developed in 1996 and explained in this paper. Now this sequence diagram shows how the SPEKE method is actually working. Now here client is the user. And server is the server. Now the first step is the registration. In this phase, the user sends the server request for registration with his username and the password, and server stores this password in his system and sends the acknowledgement that registration is complete. Now the next stage is the authentication. In this stage, both user and the server generate their own long-term private key and the public key. Now, long-term private key is actually a random value. So, and after that, using this private key, long-term public key is generated. And same for the server, it also generates its own private key and the public key long-term. Now, user generates the ephemeral private key. Now, important thing is that this ephemeral private key is generated from the shared password using password-based key derivation function. Now, what is password-based key derivation function? Now, this function takes two inputs. One is the password and another is the sort. And these two things are concatenated together and then take the hash value. So take the hash value, and after that again and again takes the hash of this value. So it means that it has a value and again hash this value. Now finally the value we received is the ephemeral private key. So here we are using this example. For example, you can see that this is the password, this is the sort value. We concatenate together and we apply the hash value, and we take this value, we are iterated 10,000 times, and finally we receive this value. This is the value of the ephemeral key in this case, in this SPEKE case. So again server will do the same, and server will generate its own ephemeral private key. So now user has a set of key, server has a set of key. So how many keys are user have? So user have the first the long-term private key. So long-term private key is the small letter P and U subscript, and the long-term public key. So it's capital P, the subscript U. Now it just generated the ephemeral private key. So ephemeral is represented by X and subscript is U. Now similarly it also has this value. Right. Now the key exchange is this. In this case, user will send the server his long-term public key, and server will send the user its long-term public key. So now, so it means that it has this value. So we received, the user received this value, and it also has this value. Now the both party is ready to calculate the common shared secret key. Now how it is done? It's the common shared secret key. It takes the public key of the server, then to the power the ephemeral private key, users. So right, and the mod queue, because we're doing the modulation. Similarly, it will do the same thing. So after key is generated, key must be confirmed, so that both parties will be sure that the same value is generated by the both parties. So how it can be done? Now user can generate a random value, and this random value is encrypted using the value Z, the common shared secret key, and sent to the server. Server will decrypt the value using the common shared secret key Z, and send the decrypted value to the user, and user user will match these two values. If it is matches, then user is actually convinced that the user and the server both generated the same common shared secret key. So this is how SPEKE is actually working. Now the next method is the HMQV, high performance key agreement based on the Diffie-Hellman scheme. It means that the key agreement, when the key will be exchanged, it will follow the Diffie-Hellman scheme. And it is also quantum resistant. So this sequence diagram shows that how HMQV method is actually working. So we have the user, we have the server. So first is the registration method. Similar, user will set a password to the server and the password will be stored with the server. And now the authentication. In the authentication method, some keys are generated. Now here there is a slight difference compared to the SPEKE. Here we are generating the long-term private key and the public key, but in this case long-term private key is actually generated based on the password using the key derivation function. So similar, server will do the same. It will also generate its own private, long-term private key and the public key. And after that, ephemeral private key and the public key will be generated. So in this case, the ephemeral private key is actually a random value, and this is the same for the server. Now both user and the server has 4 sets of key. One is the long-term private key public key and the ephemeral private key public key. So user has these sets of keys, server also has these sets of keys. Now these keys must be exchanged with each other, so that from the user will send the server his long-term public key and ephemeral public key, and server will do the same. So now based on these values, sets of key values, user and the server both will generate a common shared secret key. So now user has the long-term public key of the server. So capital P and the subscript is the server. Now take to the power its own, using its own ephemeral private key. So XQ. Now another power, its public ephemeral key. So big X and the it's ephemeral key of the server. So it's actually this thing. So this is for the user. So in case of server, same thing will happen. So in this case, this is actually the Z. This is also Z. So we will take the public key of the user to the power ephemeral key, the private ephemeral key of the server, and then again take the power to the public ephemeral public key of the user. So capital. So and the rest of the things are similar. After key is generated, key will be exchanged. So these keys user exchange. We already done that thing, and now the common shared secret key is generated, and after that key confirmation is it's the same way. Both user and server will convince to each other that they have both generated the same common shared secret key. Now I will discuss about the OPAQUE protocol. Now OPAQUE protocol is actually better compared to the SPEKE and the HMQV. Now why it is better? Now the first problem with SPEKE and the HMQV is that the password is stored in the server. So it means that so this is a side-by-side comparison between the SPEKE and the HMQV. Here we can see the password is stored in the server, and it means that in case attacker can access the server, they will recover the password, and from then on they can manipulate the system. So this is one weakness, and another problem is that here we can see that the public keys are sent and received without any kind of encryption. It means that the attacker can observe the long-term public key and the ephemeral public key without any problem. So this is another weakness, and we need to solve this problem. And another problem is that here the client or the user are the same thing. The user device could be a weak device, like a very light IoT device. Maybe it's possible that they could not perform some complex computation like modular arithmetics. So to solve this problem, OPAQUE proposed to solve this problem by the server. In OPAQUE, server will compute all the keys. I mean, it will compute his own long-term public key, private key, and the ephemeral public key, private key for the server. I mean, of course, but additionally, it will also generate sets of keys for the user. So now the thing is that how to send that keys from the server to the user. Now I will discuss it later. Now OPAQUE is defined and proven as the composition of two functionalities: oblivious pseudo-random function and the authentication key exchange. Key exchange is nothing new. We already covered this section previously. Now new thing is that oblivious pseudo-random function. Now why we need that thing? Now we need that thing because we do not want that server actually storing the password. We do not want that. We want to make sure that the server will store the password not directly, indirectly it will store it, so that if an attacker can access it, it cannot understand that what's the actual value of the password. We want to do that thing. Now what is the oblivious? Oblivious means obscured pseudo-random function. Now this is the function that instead of directly storing the password, server will store this value. So how it will do? User will send the password, just like previous cases. User will send the password, no problem. Now as soon as server actually receives the password, it computes this value. How it computes? It randomly selects the solve value, and using this solve value, it computes this section, and after this section, and it finally computes the whole function's value. So this value is actually computed by the server. Server actually done this computation. In OPAQUE, all the computation is done by the server. Server will do everything. Client or user don't have to do anything, but server needs to somehow send this secret key to the user or the client. Otherwise, client cannot compute the common shared secret key. Now, if we just directly send that, okay, user, this is the key, take it, then attacker will observe this thing and attacker will use this thing. So we do not want that. So instead of that, we will use a technique. So how it will work? Now here we can see that user is actually sending the request using the username, the password, and server is actually randomly selecting the solve value, and after that server is computing using the obscure pseudo-random function. It generates this value. It is stored in the server side. Server also generates all sorts of keys for its own key and for the keys for the user. Now we also have to do this thing that the server will send back all these keys of the user. Otherwise, user cannot create the shared secret key. But if we just send them like this thing, that okay, here it is, take back the private user key, please accept your own long-term public key. Now the thing is that attacker is actually observing this communication, and he will understand that okay, this is the thing, I can use this thing. Now we do not want that. So what we will do is that instead of directly sending them, we encrypt these three values. One is the user's long-term public key, and the private key, and the, of course, server's long-term public key. All needs to be transferred to the user. Now these three values are encrypted. How it is encrypted? Using this secret key. Using this secret key, this value is actually encrypted. Now we will send back this encrypted value, that please accept this value, and attacker will not understand that what's the meaning of this value, because in this cipher value, three values is actually packed together, but it is encrypted. But it is also a problem for the user. User do not have the shared secret key. No, this is not the shared secret key. This is the secret key. Shared secret key is the Z value that we will compute it later. This is the secret key, but he do not have that thing. But user wants to calculate that thing. But user wants to do this computation. Like this is the secret value. So this is the hash value, and this is the password. Actually, this is this thing. Now, user know the password value, no problem. But his problem is that he do not have the case solved value. So, how to transfer this value from the server? Again, server just cannot send him directly the self value. Then attacker will know the value. The attacker do not want to do. Server really do not want to do that thing. He wants to hide the value from the user. So what he will do? So he will do this intelligent technique. So what he will do? Now user will compute this section. This section he will compute. Now yes, so it means that hash value and the PWD, no problem, but he do not have the solver. Okay, but no problem. But user can calculate this thing very quickly. Now after that, what you will do is that it will generate a random value R, and he will do this thing. So when attacker will show this thing that it is transmitted, you will not understand that what is going on inside. But we know as a user and we know that okay, this is it's going to the server, and server receives this value, no problem. Now what it will do is that he will do the next add part. It means that it will do the to the power sort. Now this value will be go back to the user. Now attacker will observe that attacker again cannot discover that what is going on. But when user gets back this value, he will do this technique. He gets this value, password, or solve value, and again he will apply onto the power R, so that R is gone. What is left behind is this value. So the goal is to calculate the secret key that user wants to calculate. Now he has this section, he already has this section, and he knows the password. So now he can develop the whole function, and from that whole function he can calculate the value key. And he already have this cipher value, and we know that from this cipher value 3 values are packed together. One is the public key of the user, private key of the user, and the public key of the server. All 3 things now recovered by the user. So user has set of keys, server has set of keys. Now apply the key exchange just like previously we have done, completed the thing, and from that we will compute the common shared secret key Z. This is our main goal. So this is what is explained here. Here we can see that we are computing this section, we are sending this value to him, and from that thing it is computing that thing, and this compute value is that thing going there, and again go back to this value, and from that thing. Now after that we can see that this value is actually vanished on the R, and R is vanished, so what is left behind is this value. From this value the secret key is recovered, and from that we recovered all these value. Now user has these sets of value, and the server has these sets of value. So what value user have? User have his private long-term key and his private ephemeral key, and of course it also has the from the server, it receives the long-term public key of the server and the ephemeral public key of the server. So similarly, server has the private key, long-term private key of the server, ephemeral private key of the server, and the long-term public key of the user and the ephemeral public key of the user. So from that, it is exactly like HMQV. So we will apply that thing, and it will establish the final common shared secret key, the Z value. So we already covered this section. It will be like this section. So these three techniques are explained here.